Chapter 331 The Deceit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Burrow was a Tier 5 archer and was quite adept in situational awareness. Before the fight had started on this planet, a sizable contingent of forces and some of his strongest troops were recalled with urgency towards the capital planet. Apparently the capital forces had received confirmed news about Captain Raven intending to lead his forces to stage an attack on the capital in the coming days, and hence additional security was requested from all subsidiary planets. Not only did Burrow send 1/3 of the total forces to lend aid, he had also sent 2 of his best surface-to-air defensive weapons, hoping that they would destroy the enemy ships when they entered Dombivali. Had it not been mandatory for him to stay on the Paredes clan capital, he would have also left the planet himself to help the efforts at Dombivli. Only now did Burrow realize that the news he had received before was a complete ruse. The rebels never intended to go for the capital, they had their sights set on this planet from the start. By sending his defensive weapons and his best troops away, Burrow had played right into Raven's hands, as various ideas about how he did it passed his mind, including a forged letter from the authorities, until he finally arrived at the correct conclusion. He was not the only one that had been fooled. The entire Kingsman clan was fooled, alongside hundreds of thousands of soldiers that had been called to the capital. Defending this planet now was nearly impossible. The rebels outnumbered their forces greatly. However, there was still hope if Burrow was able to defeat all the high-ranking members in this battlefield and then level the rest of the troops using his AoE spells. Hence, shifting his attention to the other 2 giants still rampaging through his defensive lines, Burrow shot another 2 power shots, killing the giants and shifting his focus towards the approaching party of Max, Sebastian, and about 40 Tier 4 warriors. Captain Raven, I'm a huge fan. Thank you for your contributions towards the clan on the front lines. It's truly regretful that your lover is the Paredes clan bastard. If not, we would not be at odds against each other today, Burrow said as he shot an arrow towards Max, which was divided into 10 different arrows mid-air, all aiming for Max's body. Fire wall. Without a moment's hesitation, Max activated the fire wall to protect himself and the men behind him from the arrows, as the arrows melted upon coming in contact with the flames. I wish I could be as excited about meeting you as you are to meet me, but honestly all I know about you is your name. Maybe if you managed to achieve something tangible in your life you would not be so unknown today, Max said as he tried to get under the skin of the enemy, trying to see if he could provoke his wrath and force him to commit a mistake. Burrow looked to be irked. The comment definitely made his eyes cringe. However, it was not enough for him to lose his temper. You have a sharp tongue, hero, Burrow said as he used the skill, Rapid Shot, shooting fast rounds of arrows towards Max and company. Nether beasts go, Max said as he commanded the nether beasts to charge at Burrow, while he activated flame armor, and was covered in majestic flames in his upper body, looking like the embodiment of the flame god himself. The tanks amongst the Tier 4 warriors combined their defensive prowess and created a shield wall to advance, as they steadily blocked damage for the rest of the group as they slowly advanced towards Burrow. Max's nether beasts dodged a few arrows from Burrow, before Burrow realized that he could not let the beasts close in on himself too much, as he deactivated the Rapid Shot skill and used Triple Shot to accurately kill 3 of Max's 15 nether beasts at a time. He wasted a precious few seconds being forced to deal with the creatures, which allowed the rest of the warriors to gain considerable distance against him, as by the time Burrow looked up, there were roughly 10 mage spells headed for his location. Crap, too close, Burrow thought, as he activated a defensive artifact he always carried on himself, creating a light shield that minimized the strengths of the blasts directed at him. .1540 Burrow received very minor injuries, despite being bombarded by 10 spells at once. However, the artifact he used had visible cracks over it, meaning that he would not be able to rely on it to minimize damage much longer. Burrow began to retreat. As an archer, his greatest advantage was his superior range compared to his enemy, which is why his favorite range to engage in combat was having a distance of 75.100 m between himself and his target. The closer the enemy came, the harder it became for him to dodge counter-attacks and quickly change directions to tackle multiple enemies. However, the relentless rebels did not seem to give up the chase, as they constantly bothered Burrow in his retreat. Fuck, if I use that, it will utilize a sizable chunk of my mana. but if I don't use it, they won't let me retreat, Burrow thought as he contemplated on whether or not he should use his tier 5 attack, but after a lot of contemplation he decided to use it after all. Chanting a spell, Burrow pulled the string of his bow without loading an arrow as he rested his head against the bow handle and chanted something in what seemed to be ancient Elvish. Max felt his skin tingle as he saw this, as he felt like there was some great danger coming, as while he could not directly see mana currents like gods, Max could feel that the surrounding air was suddenly converging towards Burrow and something big was about to happen. Take cover. Max shouted, relying on his instincts as he instructed the troops around him. Chapter 332 Tag, Team Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As a Tier 5 warrior, Burrow had the capability of leveling hundreds of thousands of troops using his best AoE spells, however he had missed the best opportunity to use it. His special attack was most suitable for thwarting enemy siege and not for close combat, as it might result in death of friendly troops. However, despite knowing the price of the attack, he still chose to go through with it simply because it was the move that would give the enemy sufficient troubles for him to retreat freely. He chanted in ancient Elvish as he prayed to the elven gods to lend him the power to make this shot successful. As soon as a silver arrow magically appeared between the taut bowstring of Burrow's weapon. The arrow shined with a radiant brilliance, and if Anna were in the close vicinity to see it, she would instantly recognize the arrow and the subsequent attack to follow. Arrow rain. The silver arrow was released straight into the sky as it seemed to escape the bounds of gravity and shoot straight toward space. However, a couple of seconds later the blue sky was completely blotted out as what seemed to be a million arrows came raining down on the battlefield, making the entire sky dark. Inferno, 10,000 sword cuts, energy blast, water cannon, mud cocoon, swift retreat, iron defense, dig, blitzkrieg. Max, Sebastian and a lot of other Tier 4 warriors instantly retaliated with attacks that could either neutralize some of the falling arrows or help the user defend themselves better. Burrow had used despicable means to retreat, as while Max, Sebastian and the other higher-ranking troops were able to hold their own against the rain of arrows from the sky. Thousands of innocent soldiers, both rebel and Kingsman forces, died as a result of the arrow rain. Burrow's decision to indifferently kill friend and foe alike, just to create an opportunity for himself to retreat, left Max speechless as he felt his eyes open to the depths to which vampires could fall. Max was no saint, he had killed thousands of men in his life and had no remorse for most of them, but even so he would never dare to use such a despicable attack that would kill his subordinates and enemies alike. He was not innately capable of doing so, which made him both respect Burrow for his conviction and hate him for having no moral bottom line. Chain heal. Chain heal, chain heal, chain heal. Max spammed chain heal spells as he himself recovered bits of health from walking through the puddle of blood created as a result of Burrow's attack. Even amongst the Tier 4 warriors, many had 1 or 2 arrows lodged into their armor at non-vital areas, as they lost a slight portion of their health, which was immediately improved by chain heal. Burrow, on the other hand, retreated safely to 200 meters from Max as he recontinued his assault towards Max's forces from that range. Regroup, advance. Max shouted as he understood that despite the death and destruction the objective was not yet over. The battle was still raging, and as soldiers they could not rest until the matter was completely settled. The group had just witnessed the true terrifying might of a Tier 5 warrior who could decide the outcome of a large-scale battle through their own strength. Although Burrow was not the most impressive or the strongest Tier 5 warrior with countless Tier 5 attacks under his belt, with the single Tier 5 AoE spell that he did know, he managed to deal massive losses to the enemy army while remaining relatively unharmed himself. Hence Max remained very cautious in his approach towards the man, recognizing that forcing him into a close combat battle advantageous to Max won't be an easy job. "I think it's time for you to shine, Sebastian," Max said as he patted the dwarf on his head and gave him permission to do what he did best. While Max and the rest of the group cautiously advanced under the protection of the heavily armored tank-class warriors, Sebastian broke formation and began sprinting towards the enemy while clutching his tiny sword in hand. "Woo-woo!" Sebastian shouted as he charged, feeling the adrenaline pump through his veins as it was the first time since leaving the Dragon's Paradise dungeon that he was going to use this special move. The scene of a short Tier 3 dwarf, breaking formation and charging towards enemy with his tiny sword screaming, was a comedic scene when someone saw it from third-person perspective. However, what they might not notice is that despite the comedic element of the scenario, they would be unable to take their eyes off the little dwarf, completely oblivious to the rest of the world around them. This was Sebastian's special skill, attention seeker, a distraction tactic that brought all enemy eyes towards himself, letting allies roam freely. Burrow squinted his eyes looking at the charging dwarf, as he pulled a power shot arrow from his quiver, the same kind used to kill giants, and shot it toward Sebastian. Swoosh! The arrow missed its mark as Sebastian disappeared completely as it vanishing into thin air, as Burrow was left scrambling searching for the little man, confused as to what was going on. Shing! Max and Sebastian's sword attacked Burrow's body at once, as it wasn't until the last possible second that the archer turned and blocked the strike with his bow, the impact sending him straight into the tree trunk behind. How? Burrow wondered, as Sebastian and Max kept up the attack pressure, not letting the enemy create a single chance to escape. The moment Sebastian charged and began to shout, Max had also secretly broke free of the ranks and was charging towards Burrow in a circular path that eluded his field of vision. Had Burrow not been so focused on the dwarf, he would have instantly noticed the charging Max. However, Sebastian's skill made it so that he missed it. In the end, when the arrow was nearly going to pierce Sebastian, he activated his teleportation technique, and with the return stone of his technique being in Max's inventory, he teleported right behind Max as the two of them jumped Burrow from his blind spot. It was a tag-team attack the duo had learnt while hunting high-level dragons inside Dragon's Paradise, and it was executed to perfection because of their harmonic synergy. With them gaining on Burrow and pinning him down, the archer was suddenly in deep trouble, as once the rest of the forces caught up, he would have absolutely no survival chances and die a death through 1,000 cuts. Sneaky bastards! Burrow cursed as he tried to load 2 arrows quickly into his bow. However, Sebastian did not give him enough time for it at all, aiming for his neck as Burrow was forced to drop the arrows and defend himself by raising the metal bar of his bow to deflect the attack by the dwarf. Fireblast! Just as he deflected Sebastian's strike and was ready to kick the little dwarf to create separation, a fireblast spell came his way as Burrow could do nothing but rely on his defensive artifact to reduce the blow. 540 His defensive shield shattered, albeit after absorbing most of the blow, as the rest of the rebel warriors arrived the scene of the battle and quickly took positions to seal his path of retreat. Burrow had become a cornered mouse. /////A/N Bonus chapter for hitting the GT target. Good job everyone. / Chapter 333 Surrender. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the forces surrounded Burrow, the archer grew more and more desperate. He wanted to think of a way out, however all roads seemed to be leading to death. He was running low on mana. He did not have the necessary strength to unleash a tier 5 attack again, as although he pretended to be okay, his body was extremely sore from the attack he conjured earlier. The elven attack, while useful for the archer class, took a heavy toll for any race using it except the elves. It was the reason behind Burrow's fatigue and the reason behind his peak combat performance dropping by 25.3% BVEC. Put your bow down, Commander, surrender your forces, sign a system contract with me and I shall spare your life, Max said calmly as he threw Burrow a lifeline in this desperate situation. Max wanted to have high-level prisoners in his hands as trump cards, so that if any attack in the future failed and he needed to make hasty retreats where some important figures were captured or left behind, he could use the prisoners to trade for his friends. I don't trust you. I'd rather die with integrity than rot in a prison, Burrow said as he spat on the ground. Although Burrow pretended to act tough, Max could see it in his eyes that he was scared, that he was seriously considering the option of surrendering and wanted to live longer. I'll put you under house arrest, nothing too severe, let your wife if you have one accompany you. You don't necessarily have to rot in a prison cell, Max said slowly as he painted a vivid picture in Burrow's mind, one where he could have an almost normal life. No. I'll betray my kingdom if I surrender, Burrow said hesitatingly. However, his voice no longer had the edge it did, he was already halfway convinced. You and your forces die if you don't, we outnumber you and we will cut you like dogs if you don't surrender, Sebastian said as he tried to support Max's desires of making the archer submit. A warm tea in bed, or eternal darkness in a coffin, chose now for my patience has ran thin, Max said as he summoned a flame in right palm, appearing to be threatening. Burroughs will came crumbling as he heard this, as his desire to live finally overpowered his morals as he let go of his bow and kneeled. Clang trrr his metal bow which was sure to be epic grade or above clanged against the ground as Burroughs shamefully put his hands behind his head, much to the pleasure of Max who smiled behind his mask. Spread the news, it's over, we have their commander, Max said as he wanted the news of the surrender to spread across the battlefield and then throughout the planet. Loud cheers could be heard from the victorious rebel army, as medics quickly flooded the field trying to heal the wounded as weapons were put aside for potions and an initial damage report was starting to compile. With Burrow tied at the front with heavy metal chains, the army marched towards the capital city gates where Burrow ordered them to open the gates as Max's army walked into a defenseless capital city in high spirits. It was a dream come true for Asaiva, who walked right behind Burrow as a hero as civilians who remembered the kind Lord Paredes in their hearts rushed to the streets to welcome the rebel forces like they were heroes. Long live Princess Asaiva, long live Captain Raven, long live the Paredes bloodline, our true lady has returned, all hail the Hound, the mighty hero of the vampire crown. Flowers and perfume were thrown at the marching army as they walked through the capital streets as loud cheers from the civilians alongside various chants could be heard. Asaiva's head was high in pride, as she walked with her back straight and her eyes moist. This meant everything to her, the homeland she grew on, the legacy of her father, it was finally liberated from foreign rule. Asaiva waved her hands in the air and accepted any and all garlands that people wanted her to wear as amongst all their adoration and love she marched towards the royal palace, her home, which she once had to flee in fear and disgrace. Max, Anna and Sebastian watched from the sidelines as Asaiva took out the old Paredes clan insignia from her inventory, and climbed on top of the royal palace wall replacing the Kingsman clan banner with the Paredes clan banner. A crowd of hundreds of thousands gathered outside the palace to watch this historic moment as they cried tears of joy to see things return to their natural order. The planet had been on a decline since the Kingsman clan took over as they turned it into a colony for exploitation with high tax rate and heavy emphasis on export industry rather than local agriculture. The economy had been on a slow decline in the last 3 years and the hardships of the common man increased day by day. Fortunately before things become irreversibly bad, the foreigners were defeated and the true noble of this land was back inside the palace. Standing on top of the palace wall, Asaiva looked towards the sky as she prayed to her father in a moment of silence. Father, today I've liberated our home, soon I'll avenge your death. I know you never wanted me to be an administrator or a public servant, you wanted me to marry a good man and live a carefree life, however, that dream of mine has died alongside you. From now, my goal is to bring this land, our land to the highest peak of culture, economy and security. I want everyone in this universe to know that if there is a heaven, it's in the lands governed by the Paredes clan. I miss you, may your soul rest in peace. Chapter 334 Aftermath. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He captured the Paredes clan capital. Roy Kingsman said in astonishment as he stared at his war council with a wide mouth. Everyone had their heads facing towards the floor as nobody had the guts to face the Lord. Every one of them had been fooled, they had believed that Raven was planning an attack on Dombivli City and had hence aggressively called for reinforcements from all other planets as they reduced the security on every planet except the capital. They were convinced of a swift and complete victory when Max eventually set foot on Dombivli City. However, the clever captain never intended to set a single foot on the Paredes clan capital anyways, his target was the auxiliary planets and the Kingsman clan had fallen straight for their trap. Uncle, do you have any explanations? Roy said, signaling for his uncle, one of the 5 Kingsman clan Tier 5 commanders to speak. My lord, the intelligence report we received was not verified and believed from a single source. 14 independent organizations submitted the same report to us. It was not just us who were fooled, I think it was Raven's entire army who had no idea about the real plan of attack. The enemy is a master strategist and a genius, a hero of the front lines. It's regretful that we were fooled, but I can assure you, we won't make the same mistake twice. Farid Kingsman, the uncle of Roy and Keem as well as the cousin brother of the deceased Will Kingsman said as he tried to assure Roy of his competency. Although Roy sat on the throne, virtually all power and politics of the kingdom was controlled by Farid. His explanation in public was nothing more than a farce and politeness, as even if he said, "We made a mistake, so what?" In front of Roy, there was nothing he could do about it despite being the Lord. The moment Roy had signed the documents to open the gates of the royal treasury to the army, Farid had used his political, physical and economic prowess to buy the majority of the politicians and military officials of the country. If he truly wanted to, he could organize a coup to instate himself as Lord the next day. However, he was patiently waiting for the war to end, so that he could ascend on the throne as a victorious war general, just like Regus Aurelius. This was the only reason behind his polite attitude to the upstart brat Roy, who had lost one of his balls to a kidnapper. "Very well, I believe you, uncle, so what do we do about the forces we have recalled from the other planets? Do we send them back or do we keep them here?" Roy asked as he swept his gaze across the room, looking for anyone who would give him a proper answer. "We should send them back," a low-level court official said very softly. However, Farid laughed at this suggestion and said, "We send them back and then what? Raven attacks the capital and we lose everything. The capital planet generates about 85% of our economy, while the other 4 planets contribute only 15%. Even if Raven captures all 4 planets one, by the end he would only have hardly 100,000 troops left. 100,000 troops are not enough to run 4 planets, we will take them back in one fell sweep. What we need to focus now is security of the capital, because if we lose the capital city, we will truly be crippled." Murmurs broke out throughout the room as everyone contemplated Farid's words. They seemed to be very wise, however, it still felt uncomfortable to let the enemy gain access to so many planets. Is there no better choice? Maybe we can hire mercenaries or a private army? Roy asked. However, his boyish question made many counselors roll their eyes. A monthly salary for a hired mercenary to fight in war was 400 gold a month for Tier 1 warriors. Because of the high-risk nature of the job, even hiring the most basic soldiers broke one's back during times of war, which is why armies preferred cultivating troops from scratch and using them at times of war, because 500 gold coins could cover the salary of a soldier for a year. My nephew, have you heard the saying? If a lion walks 2 steps back, it's not because it's afraid of its prey, it's because it's elongating the length of its run-up, to jump higher and pounce stronger. We are the lions, and the rebels are the prey. They can celebrate these small wins all they want. One day we shall take back everything and then some in one fell swoop. Farid declared boldly as everyone in the council cheered. They were convinced that the good days of the enemy were surely numbered. Meanwhile Max, "I'm tired buddy, I'm sure the soldiers are too, I'm in no position to fight a second battle today," Sebastian said as he protested Max's plan of launching a second raid on the same day. "The enemy won't be expecting it, they won't be vigilant, we can take them by surprise," Max said, knowing full well in his heart that his thinking was along the correct lines. "But what about fatigue?" Sebastian questioned. Everyone was dead tired today. "We are soldiers, the moment we have eaten, we have our injuries treated, we have rested for 6 hours, what more do you need? Pass the order, tonight we storm Gianmi planet, we depart in 3 hours and that is final," Max said with conviction as he passed his order on to Sebastian, who pursed his lips. "We lost 65,000 troops this battle Max, around 35,000 more injured, that's about a third of our forces," Sebastian said, trying to make his point. "If we don't attack tonight, then we will lose more. Let the dead rest in peace and the injured heal on this planet, 250,000 troops is all I need to win this battle." You can choose to come with me, or rest here if your joints ache too much, Max replied coldly as tonight he was in no mood to play the best friend's role, tonight he was in commander mode and Sebastian had to choose to obey or rebel. I understand, Captain, I'll relay your orders and be ready, Sebastian eventually said as Max dismissed him from the room. Chapter 335 Another Victory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The troops were groggy and grumpy when they were ordered to fight for a second time in the same day, however, Max's orders were absolute and they had to comply. The troops considered the first battle to be a fine victory, and were convinced of Max's competence as a commander, which was the only reason why no riots broke out when he asked them to march immediately. Max wanted to attack Gianmi planet, the small mining planet of the Paredes clan, where they had a small overall population of 2 million inhabitants, most of them located near a single large iron mine. The planet only had 120,000 troops guarding it overall and had a Tier 4 veteran warrior as the planet's keeper. It was the easiest planet to pick off from all 4 planets, with the only significance it provided to the Kingsman clan being the supply of steel, which was sold way below market rate. Even if the planet was captured, the only inconvenience it would bring to the Kingsmen would be the loss of mining operations worth 2 million gold coins/day. However, for a short period of time the loss was completely bearable. Gianmi was covered in iron-rich red soil, however, the iron content in its soil was so concentrated that it made cultivation of most crops impossible. The only arable land on the planet being near a massive lake the size of a major sea on Earth, which had a few thousand acres of nearby land where water cycle and rainfall was common. The local agriculture was only enough to support a local population of 10 million inhabitants, and hence except for the iron mining the future aspect of the planet was also bleak. How long till we reach there? Max asked the pilot, as he found himself once again inside the same travel ship. However, the only difference between the previous battle and this one was that Asaiva was not by his side this time around. Naturally, Asaiva wanted to come with him to fight, however, Max made her the guardian of the Paredes capital they just captured and convinced her that she needed to stay back. The reason why Max did this was because he could see the emotional state Asaiva was in after the victory, and he knew in his heart that he needed to give her a few days to settle in. Although she was an extremely valuable warrior on the battlefield, one who Max could entrust his back to, he needed to make do without her for now. We will enter the atmosphere in 7 minutes, Captain, the pilot informed Max as Max looked at the massive-looking red planet in front of him with great melancholic as it reminded him of Earth's neighbor, Mars. Once I conquer this planet, I'll rename it to Mars 2.0, fuck the universe, I like it, Max murmured as he felt adrenaline course through his veins at the thought of the upcoming battle. Soon, the ship entered the planet's atmosphere and the air defenses were triggered. However, unlike the Paredes capital, the air defenses of Gianmi were even more pathetic as only 2 ships were hit before landing, killing around 2,500 soldiers. Charge, Max shouted upon landing, as this time around all his forces were attacking a single military base constructed near the iron mines on the outskirts of a city. It was clear to Max by the state of the unarmored local soldiers that they were completely not expecting an attack, as they only had enough time to find the most crude weapons they could get their hands on before charging onto the battlefield. Fireball, 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 inferno, Max spammed about 50 fireballs non-stop before using an inferno spell, as within the first 2 minutes of arriving at the battlefield he already killed 20 Tier 1 soldiers, 5 Tier 2 soldiers and 1 Tier 3 soldier. The battle for the control of the planet was short and decisive, as after about 45 minutes of fighting Abu, the military representative Vega had sent to oversee his forces, brought before Max the defeated Kingsman clan keeper of Gianmi planet, Rovan Dar, who pleaded to Abu for a peaceful surrender. Rovan could see that defeat was inevitable, but he did not want his men to die for nothing, as he decided to surrender and stop the bloodshed. You wish to surrender? Max questioned Rovan, as the prideful warrior fell to his knees and said, You may take my head, but spare my men. If it were just Rovan, he would probably fight till his death. However, since he was responsible for the lives of many soldiers, he was humble. Very well, we accept your surrender, but all your men have to sign a system contract that they will never harm the Paredes forces and will never pick up arms in support of the Kingsman clan ever again. Additionally, they have to be kept under observation for the period that this war lasts. Maybe 3 months, maybe 3 years, but until we win against Dombivli City, they cannot leave Gianni. Is that okay? Max asked Rovan, who nodded. My men shall accept. Rovan said sullenly, what about you, will you accept it? Max asked with an icy edge to his voice. I'm loyal to the Kingsman clan, I'd rather die than surrender, Captain Raven. My only request is that you let my son cremate me properly in our ancestral grave on Gianni planet and tell my wife I'm sorry for not coming back home for dinner, Rovan said as he looked straight into Max's eyes without fear and smiled. Max was moved by Rovan's words and demeanor. The man was truly simple and loyal. Although he knew that letting such a powerful enemy go unharmed was stupid, he decided to spare his life. Free him, let him take his wife and kids and leave Gianni planet, Max ordered as he began walking away from Rovan. Don't kill me, or the next time we meet I'll still be a Kingsman clan soldier opposing you, might try to kill you, Rovan said as he did not wish for the enemy's mercy. You can try. But you won't succeed, Max said with confidence as he walked away from Rovan with satisfaction in his heart that he had successfully captured 2 planets in a single day. /////A/N. Bonus chapter for hitting the PS target, good job everyone. ///// Chapter 336 Unexpected Rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My lord. My lord, please wake up, the servant said as he banged on Roy Kingsman's door. Roy, who had just slept after a short session with one of the maids, woke up groggily as he searched for his pants. My lord. My lord, the servant kept banging as the irritated Roy shouted, I'm awake, you idiot, stop banging. Roy cursed under his breath. Ever since the rebels were after his kingdom he rarely has a good night's sleep. What is it? He asked, irritated as he opened the door as he looked at the aghast face of the servant and his brother, realizing something was seriously wrong. Raven captured Gianni, Keen Kingsman said as Roy felt like the world was spinning under his feet. But he just captured the Paredes capital, how is it possible to launch another offensive so fast? Roy was unable to wrap his head around this situation as only a few hours ago he had heard the news about the fall of one planet. Nobody was expecting it. He outclassed us twice in a single day. We have already put the other 2 planets on high alert, but it's safe to say we won't be getting any more cheap iron for the time being, Keen said as he closed his eyes tight as if in deep pain. What about the dwarven shipment? That deal was worth 6 billion gold coins. We have promised to deliver them iron in exchange for state-of-the-art air defense systems. We were going to load our entire stock accumulated over the last 10 years for the deal, but the planet fell into enemy hands just like that. Roy asked as his heart skipped a beat. The shipment was about to depart for the dwarven city of Dworgen in 2 days' time, yet at such a critical juncture Raven captured the planet. What dog's hit luck was I born with? How did he do it? Do we have a leak within our ranks? Roy questioned his fate and the loyalty of his council. In his mind he was convinced that someone was controlling the scenes from the shadows and viewed the Kingsman clan as their enemy. Meanwhile Max read the report regarding the iron vaults being ordered to load an enormous shipment of steel bound for Dworgen, in a deal whose market value was approximately 6 billion gold coins. It was the reserves the planet had accumulated over the last decade under Will Kingsman and Cole Paredes. However, now it all fell into Max's hands. Although Max was not privy to the information behind the exact transaction of the deal, what he did know was that Dworgen was interested in steel, and since he had a lot of it, he could negotiate a deal for himself. Max sent an attendant to fetch Sebastian as he waited patiently in what used to be Rovan's office. Since the Kingsman clan were not going to be able to keep up their end of the deal, Max wanted to send Sebastian as an ambassador to Dworgen and see if he could strike a deal. The moment Sebastian entered the room, he threw his hands up in the air as he said, "You were right, we barely lost 10,000 soldiers and conquered another planet. If we had delayed the attack we might have lost much more." Your judgment was better than mine. Sebastian admitted his mistake in questioning Max's line of thought. It was clear that Max was a natural-born commander who was well suited for this job. Max smiled listening to this comment. Getting validated by male friends was a different sort of satisfaction. I'm sending you as my ambassador to Dworgen. We have lots of steel they want. Negotiate me the best deal. I give you full authority, Max said as he explained the full situation in a few short sentences. Sebastian lacked context to understand what Max was saying, but after reading the documents that Max handed over to him everything made sense as he nodded his head and said, I'll see what I can do. Dworgen was about 36 hours of flight in normal spacecraft, which is why the best route to reach the city was to go to Xander and then teleport to Dworgen. Putting his fatigue aside, Sebastian slapped his cheeks and gave Max a confident smile as he departed for Dworgen at once. Meanwhile the newspapers, breaking news, breaking news. The rising star Captain Raven after leaving the army has captured 2 of the Kingsman-controlled planets in a single day. Asaiva Paradis has reinstated her family flag over the Paradis capital. The murder of Cole Paradis has been avenged. The shocking piece of news shook the entire vampire community as once again Max's military prowess was under full display. In a single day in 2 short battles he had conquered 2 enemy planets. Raven is unstoppable. He will become a lord sooner or later and his clan will rise through the ranks very quick. I'm a mercenary who is thirsty for war. If I have a leader like Raven leading me into the battlefield, I feel like I'll be able to live my finest life. I'm definitely following him into battle and joining his army. The Kingsman idiots have no chance against Raven. That guy defeated a barbarian stronghold alone. Ain't no way the Kingsman winning against him. I think Raven is acting too rashly. Even if his gambles pay off 100 times, if he makes a single mistake he will lose everything. My money is on the Kingsmen. They will weather through this storm. The Kingsmen are going to definitely retaliate. Trade and commerce will be affected and prices of local commodities will skyrocket. If anyone reading this is in Dombivli, stock up on food and resources now. Raven is a lucky bastard, nothing more. It's funny how tier 3 children are being hailed as heroes now. In my times we worshipped men like King Regus Aurelius. Now that's a true vampire. You are just salty that you are not 1/10000000000. The man Raven is. A war of words erupted as netizens once again fervently discussed the exploits of the infamous Captain Raven. Chapter 337 Negotiations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Meanwhile inside Hazel Groove Empire, Emperor Cervantes, Father, the Dream Monarch is on the verge of defecting to the Dark Faction. The human sovereign Cain has been confirmed to frequent his palace, Prince Amon said as he reported disturbing news to his father, Emperor Cervantes. What does the true elite kingdom have to say regarding this issue? Cervantes asked, wanting to know Neatwit's point of view on this matter before making a decision. They say war is inevitable. We need to start storing food and produce weapons and potions. The Queen is no longer maintaining the balance of the universe, Amon said, shaking his head as he controlled the boiling rage in his heart. The Council of Monarchs under the supervision of the Celestials had created the Universal Queen to maintain peace and harmony between the 2 factions in the last 5,000 years. The Light faction was the dominant faction with the threat of many powerful monarchs acting as deterrent for Dark faction sovereigns to act rowdy. However, that situation had been rapidly changing with more and more planets graduating out of Omega to join the Dark faction. Their forces strengthened significantly, while the death of one in a Millennium warriors such as Thor and Shikuni burst a hole through the Light faction ranks. According to the One Knights and the Angels, the situation amongst the Dragon clans is critical. If tensions are not eased in the coming months, there will be full-blown war in the next 5 years for sure. The Dark faction will use this opportunity to create chaos. We need to be prepared, Amon said as Cervantes gave him an indifferent glance. The monarch had been through countless wars in his lifetime and was not afraid of the Dark faction forces. His kingdom was economically strong, had staunch allies and an equally strong army. I don't know what the rest will do, or who will defect, but the Hazel Groove Empire will defend the Light faction values till its last day of existence. Passed the message to the gods and the planetary representatives to start a recruitment drive and mock combat practices to prepare the soldiers, also informed the finance ministers to vastly increase military spending. If war is inevitable, then the best course of action is to prepare for it well, Cervantes told his son as he clutched his divine sword's handle tightly. Understood, father, Amon said as he left the room. Sighing deeply, Cervantes looked towards the sky as he wished Shikuni was still alive, as with him leading the battlefield, no matter the odds Cervantes could be assured of victory. Meanwhile on Dworgen, Sebastian was in an ultra-luxurious cave with all sorts of oil and gasoline smells, as it was oddly calming yet unnerving at the same time. Sebastian felt like Dworgen was a true paradise in the universe, as after a long time he felt secure about his own height after seeing everyone being around his own stature or lower. Everything was built to his convenience, the door handles were not too high, the markets had robes his size, and booze was free-flowing no matter the joint he entered. If Sebastian was not on a mission he would have taken his sweet time to explore the city. However, since he was on official duty he could only regretfully head for the Black Dog Smithing Company, who were supposed to buy the steel. Black Dog was a huge arms manufacturing company, and its products were well known throughout the universe. Initially Sebastian was not given entry at all, however once he explained his position and circumstances he was led to an ultra-luxurious cave office where he was asked to wait for the company's head. Mr. Sebastian, sorry to keep you waiting, the company head said as he walked on his short legs into the office and took the seat opposing Sebastian. The man was barely an inch above 3 feet, a dwarf amongst dwarves, yet his demeanor and clothing were excellent. It's not an issue, Sebastian said politely as he chuckled inwardly at the man's stature. I'm told you are in possession of Jianmi planet and its iron reserves now. We already had a deal with the Kingsman clan regarding those supplies, however, I assume we need to make a new agreement for them, the company head said as Sebastian nodded. We can dispatch the ship at a moment's notice if you need the supplies urgently, but the price has to be negotiated, Sebastian said coldly as he gave his cowardly smile. He might be a little reluctant to throw himself into life or death situations, however, and business negotiation was not a subject he would ever back down from. What do you hope for? The chief asked, narrowing his eyes. Destroyer-class battleships, 6 of them for 5.5 billion and 1 billion gold coins in cash, Sebastian said, putting forward an aggressive demand. Impossible, the market value of those goods is only equal to 6 billion, yet the combined value of goods you are asking for is 7 billion, the company chief said as he wanted to instantly shoot down the ridiculous demand. My, don't tell me that your company doesn't even have a 30% profit margin on proprietary goods such as battleships. Your annual sale is about 20 ships, yet I'm ordering 6 at once, although the market price is 1 billion per ship. Both of us know it doesn't cost more than 650.700 million for you to make. Even if you sell 6 of them to us, it's 4.2 billion gold coins, yet I'm paying you 5 billion for it. And asking you for 1 billion liquid. It's a very fair deal where you get 6 billion worth of steel for 5.2, Sebastian said, putting forward sound logic to rattle the company head. Eddie ETTH. That. The company head was in shambles. What Sebastian said made a lot of sense, but he also felt that if he did as Sebastian said he would somehow make a loss. That's not how economics work. I will still make a profit, but it's lesser than what I'll make overall, the company head retorted. Then I'll just take 6 billion cash, go to some other company to buy battleships, then you will make even greater loss, Sebastian retorted in perfectly sound logic as the company head was left stuttering for answers. He was a dwarf who only loved machines, he was not as good as goblins and humans when it came to matters of money. The only reason why he headed the company was because his family's hatred towards goblins made them biased against hiring them as employees. Sebastian, once being a human who went to the vegetable market daily, was seasoned in such matters, and once he noticed the man's hesitation he started to aggressively negotiate until they finally agreed on a price of 6 battleships and 700 million gold coins in cash. It was a deal far superior than the one the Kingsman clan negotiated, as Sebastian solved one of the biggest problems the rebel army currently had, which was the lack of battleships, while simultaneously solving the immediate liquidity crisis. /////A/N. Bonus chapter for hitting the GT target, we are only 10 votes behind number 10 now, let's go guys, ////. Chapter 338 Reverse Summoning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Paradis Capital, inside the old palace. This is the place where I used to store my wine bottles when I was 13, I started drinking early, Asiva said as she excitedly led Max to tour her old home, telling him memories associated with every corner of the place. Max patiently toured the place pretending to be interested when he was really bored out of his mind. This is my father's bedroom, apparently there used to be a crib here, it's the room where I was born and raised till I was 2 years old, Asiva said as Max signaled for the servants to leave the room and shut the door behind. Asiva was surprised when she heard the door close behind herself, as she looked at Max with a puzzled expression and said, "Tired already? We haven't even seen half the place yet." Max smiled and said, "No, not tired at all, I'll prove it to you if you want." There was mischief in his eyes, looking at which Asiva shrieked in panic. She recognized this look in Max's eyes very well, it was the look of a lustful beast in heat. "No, no, 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 not in my father's room," Asiva said as she pleaded with Max to go somewhere else, but Max was in no mood to listen. "It's only right to make a baby here when it's your birthplace," he said as he grabbed Asiva's gown and tore it in half in one clean motion. Asiva was reluctant, however, seeing that she could not escape her predicament now. She decided to might as well enjoy it as she pulled Max in for a passionate kiss. Needless to say, the servants outside heard muffled moans for the next 3 hours as they gulped in fear for the life of their lady. It's not even night time yet, if this is the day session, how would the nights look? A female servant wondered as she prayed to the vampire gods for the good health of her lady. For she was in love with a beast. The next day, Sebastian returned from a successful trip to Dworgen as he reported the situation to Max, who was extremely satisfied with how things turned out. The destroyer ships were the backbone of any budding empire, as it increased space battle prowess alongside one's ability to fight against air defense systems while landing. Max gave his approval to send the iron shipment urgently to Dworgen. While the shipment would be delivered in the next 2 days, it would take 3 months for all 6 destroyer ships to be delivered, with them receiving 1 ship every few weeks. The only thing Max would get against the delivery was the immediate payment of 700 million gold coins, which was a huge relief to his tight finances as of late. Having destroyer ships, his chances of winning the Kingsman clan capital had increased several-fold. Max had decided to coronate Asiva as the Paradis clan lady for the time being, as while they were not arranging a grand ceremony, they did invite Vega Titus to do the honors. Thankfully, the Paradis lands were her birthright and she did not need Regus Aurelius's permission to be crowned. But while Asiva would become the lady of the 2 planets, Max intended to merge her into his own clan once he became the new lord of Kingsman territory. He intended on marrying her and establishing a new vampire clan in the process. Apart from these matters, Max was resting and recuperating as he and Abu discussed the future course of actions in the war. For the time being, Max did not intend on capturing the other 2 Kingsman subsidiary planets and wanted to strengthen his army. At least till he was in possession of all 6 ships and his crew was trained in maneuvering them, Max did not want to make any rash decisions. On the bright side, the daily influx of soldiers seeking to join the army has increased exponentially with the spread of news amongst the vampire kingdom of his spectacular victories. Many war enthusiasts and bloodthirsty people joined his army, while the lower-ranking lords finally saw him as a true major threat. With about 2,500 troops joining every day, Max was on track to replenish all lost manpower within the next 20 days. Just as he was busy doing paperwork regarding the upcoming coronation ceremony, he got a system notification that made his heart jump in panic. System notification. Your soulbound Mira is requesting for your help. Will you choose to accept and teleport to her current location? Mira was requesting him for help, although Max did not know what was the reason behind it. He did not waste any time accepting at all, only leaving behind a small note on his desk before he did to make sure nobody panicked even if he was gone for several days. As he accepted the request for help, Max found himself teleported and traveling through space at such high speeds that his entire body felt like it was elongating from end to end. Max did not understand how such travel breaking the laws of space and time was possible, but he could feel a string that connected to something intangible inside him being the reason behind his abnormally fast travel. This is how pets feel every time you summon them, it's the soul bond, Drax explained as Max got a better understanding of his situation. His and Myra's bond was special, she was not his pet but her equal, which was why the summoning ritual which could summon her when he needed her, also allowed her to summon him when she needed to. And today happened to be one such day. When Max eventually emerged on the other side of the teleportation, he found himself beside a heavily wounded Mira who was bleeding from all across her body with her HP at a critically red bar and her consciousness fading fast. "Help!" Mira said lightly as her eyelids shut down, giving Max a small heart attack as he was not able to wrap his head around the situation just what the hell was going on. Chapter 339 Kidnapped God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Help!" Mira said lightly as her eyelids shut down, giving Max a small heart attack as he was not able to wrap his head around the situation. Chain heal, blood manipulation. Max instantly used his healing spells as he restored some of Myra's lost HP and used blood manipulation to stop her wounds from bleeding. Mira was in a rough shape, both her wings had multiple cuts that rendered her flightless, whereas her belly and head were also covered in slice marks where some object had taken off chunks of her flesh. "Dragon claws!" Max exclaimed as he recognized the pattern marks of her injury from his time in the Dragon's Paradise dungeon. The 3 claw marks were definitely of a dragon. Max could not understand how the princess and the darling of Rhea could ever be in such a situation. He was currently inside a cave on an unknown planet, with the only illumination inside the cave being from glowing wall crystals. Roar! Max heard a loud and prudent dragon roar that did not sound friendly at all in the distance. He could imagine that it would be from the dragon/group of dragons trying to kill Mira. Max's eyes turned sharp, this was a critical situation, he needed to get Mira to safety, although it seemed she had shaken off her pursuers to enter this cave somehow. If the enemy had detect spells, they would be found out sooner or later and Mira needed at least a few days of recuperating before she could fly again. Thankfully, Max had an intermediate HP potion in his inventory as he carefully dripped the blue liquid into Myra's mouth, restoring her HP and helping her body heal her wounds faster. After Max fed her the potion, he could see her breathing stabilize much better, as while she did not open her eyes she seemed to be sleeping soundly, as if in a deep sleep after a long battle. Assured that she was alright, Max used scan to get an idea of his immediate surroundings, before realizing that he was inside a mountain with many interconnected caves. The section he and Mira were in had no immediate threats, however various creatures dwelled inside this cave and their power levels were no joke. Max scanned there to be multiple tier 3 and 4 creatures while there also being a couple tier 5s lurking. These creatures were all cave dwellers, spiders, worms and kobolds, which meant that this was definitely not a dragon planet as Max remembered Rhea saying that noble dragon planets had no other creatures living on them but dragons. Pulling his staff out in one hand, and his sword in another, Max stood guard at the entrance of the section of the cave he and Mira were in, hoping to protect the youngling till she woke up and gave him more details about their exact situation. Meanwhile Hazriel, Archangel Michael, an ancient god has awoken and became active again, Hazriel said as she presented a report to his elder brother and leader of angels. Michael threw a glance at the report and bounced out of his throne seat, as sweat dripped from his forehead. "Angakok," Michael said with trembling fear as he had heard about the reputation of the blood shaman. The unnamed god, the teacher of the angels and the strongest individual Michael had ever came across once said that during the Chaos era, Angakok was such a terrifying figure that even the unnamed god feared him. The exact words he said were, "If I had to cut off my arm voluntarily or face Angakok in battle, I'd slice my arm off without hesitation." What does he want? Why has he become active after all this time? Michael asked Hazriel as she pursed her lips. "Angakok has abducted one of our subjects forcefully, the old sea god Knum. I don't know why, but he is the only keeper of the way of the water in the universe at the moment, Hazriel reported as Michael fell into deep contemplation. Khnum was an old god, his divinity was waning, and despite being a Tier 8 existence in his prime days, his current strength was only early Tier 7 at best. He had retired from active politics 3,000 years ago, and was living peacefully in heaven. Michael was oath-bound to protect him, however, he did not wish to risk conflict with Angakok over it. "What does your divination say?" Michael asked Hazriel sometimes. Hazriel's divinations helped her see glimpses of the future, and based on those glimpses she could guide Michael into making the right decisions. "I can't peer into Angakok's fate. He is like a bright purple lightning that exists outside of the space-time continuum, a god that ancient should not be as strong as he used to be, as while us gods are presumed to be immortal, we do have an age limit of 15,000.20,000 years. No matter the existence, their power will start waning after they are 5,000 years old and become nearly useless after 10,000. Almost no recorded god in history has ever lived for 15,000 years, except the Celestials," Hazriel said as Michael was genuinely disappointed. Old monsters like Angakok were supposed to retire from the universal stage after the Chaos Era, however, for some reason he was back and active after being gone from the universal stage for so long. There was definitely some huge story behind his return, and his plans were sure to be not simple. "We are oath-bound to protect Khnum, send someone to start digging up Angakok's whereabouts, and we will decide whether or not to antagonize him after we find him. In the meanwhile, I'll go look for Master. Only he can guide us in such a scenario," Michael said as he passed his verdict on the situation. /////A/N This bonus chapter has been sponsored by patron Cervantes91, please thank him in the comments for this one. We have also reached top 10 in GT rankings because of you all. Thank you for the support. Let's maintain our spot till the end of the month for 10 chapters on April 1st. ///// Chapter 340 The Situation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mira woke safe and sound in a dimly lit cave as she stared speechless at Max's wide back, wondering if this was all a dream. "Max," Mira said weakly after a while, as Max was alerted about the fact that she had woken up. "How are you feeling?" Max asked Mira, wondering if the kiddo felt okay. When Mira passed out she was still in her dragon form, however, using some of her powers she transformed into her human form, and now that she was with Max, turning into a much smaller body frame. "Easy there, don't strain yourself," Max told Mira as he supported her head from colliding on the rocks underneath as the naked body of a teenager laid bare in front of Max's eyes. Myra's body was bruised all over, with various red and purple clots all over her midsection, as in this form Max could see the injuries and inflammation around her ribs much better, gaining a better understanding of her situation. For a moment, Max's eyes scanned the private parts of her body. As his breathing quickened, however, he reined in his impulse quickly as he focused on treating Mira. "This will hurt, bear with me," Max said as he ran his hand across Myra's midsection, feeling her spine and ribs as he recognized the area of problem, before tying the injured areas with a tight cloth to provide support and reduce inflammation around injured parts. A professional healer could probably completely cure Mira in a matter of 30 minutes, however, with there being an unavailability of one, Max had to rely on his crude bandaging methods to aid Myra's natural recovery. "Who did this to you?" Max asked once he settled Mira against the wall, as he tried to understand the situation. "Everyone has betrayed us, everyone. Initially we believed that only a few clans are planning rebellion, however, the reality is we are alone. Green, white, red, brown, yellow, every one of these clans have been compromised. Even if their patriarch might not be directly involved, high-level officials have colluded in their attempt to assassinate me. The dragon clans can't stand my prowess. Some dumb ancient dragon has prophesied me to become the first true monarch and ruler of the 12 dragon clans since the Chaos Era. However, not many are ready to accept the hegemony of my black and gold lineage. I've become an eyesore for them, and they plan to remove me before I can fulfill my destiny, Mira said with flaring anger as Max felt goosebumps down his spine listening to this. The dragon clans were way stronger than the other light faction clans in general, with each independent dragon clan being ruled by either a tier 7 or tier 8 overlord. The general strength level of the dragons was also much higher, with almost all dragons enlisted in the army corps being tier 3 or higher. A turmoil within the dragon clans meant a huge war that could change the landscape of the universe. What planet are we on? Can we reach your mother safely? Max asked her, as since the other clans were responsible for Myra's current state, he needed to be careful as to whom to trust and whom not to. We are on Bloodthorn. It's the planet where the dragons come to hunt for food. It's littered with tier 3.4.5 strength creatures. It is supposed to be a safe place. However, I'm being pursued by 2 tier 6 gods and a few other tier 5 chumps in a party which comprises of all clans. It's only because of my bottomless mana that I was able to use an extreme agility spell for an extended period of time to escape their field of vision, before transforming into a human to enter the orifice of this small cave. Although I was bruised in the pursuit, most of my injuries occurred after I entered this mountain, as I had to fight with various spiders and kobolds and even a tier 5 opponent to reach this small safe cave where I could pass out. Although the gods pursuing me have great perception, this mountain is home to countless creatures, and finding me within this place is like finding a needle in a haystack. For now we are safe, but to reach my mother we need to find a way to bypass them and reach the nearest black dragon stronghold, which is 120 kilometers from this mountain. Dragons often need 4.6 days to completely have their fill of eating, hence my absence won't be noticed for 3 more days. Although the most logical step for us is to wait these 3 days out inside the cave, my instincts tell me I need to get out and somehow report this betrayal to my mom. I feel like if I don't reach home in time, my mom will start a bloody war to find me, and she will indiscriminately massacre anyone who obscures her path. I feel like that will be the trigger to an all-out war, and I don't want to be the one reason behind starting it. The worst part is, if they dare attack me, they probably dare to attack mother and father as well. If they do attack them, let's just say that won't be a good scenario at all. Mira said as she explained all her concerns in a logical and calm manner, letting Max know the exact line of reasoning she had in mind for her decisions. You are in no condition to fly. 120 kilometers is a long distance, and the route will undoubtedly be monitored by your enemies. Even if we run for it, it's still about half a day's march, but with your injuries and possible dangers along the way, I'd say it'll take us at least 1.5 to 2 days to reach. Is it still worth it for you? Max asked as he tried to knock some sense into the young dragon, that she needed to rest and survive. However, Mira had already made up her mind as she said, once I catch my breath, I'll start walking out of this mountain and towards the base where my mother is waiting for me. You can choose to come with me or not. Max sighed in defeat. He sometimes wondered where Mira got her decisive personality from. However, whenever he wondered about this question, his heart told him that he probably needed to look in the mirror for that answer.